thank you very much, everyone, for coming tonight. So tonight we're doing how to write an inspiring abstract, poster or free paper session. So we've got a lovely panel of experts with us as well from the Society of Tissue Viability. So I'm Clare Greenwood. We've got Madeleine Flanagan, who's also speaking tonight. We've also got Ina Farrelly and Sarah Bradbury. Sorry, they're all trustees for the Society of Tissue Viability, and they're giving us lots of bits of expertise. And we've also got Karen Svanberg from UMA who's here. So if there's any specific questions about UMA, then she's here to help. Thank you for coming tonight. So just to go through the aims for what we're doing. So we're going to talk about what actually is an abstract and the different types of abstracts that there are and you can be doing. Talk a little bit about what are the benefits of actually presenting at a conference and why we should be doing it. What sort of things you can present and where. Madeleine's going to do a brilliant session on actually the skills of writing an abstract. We're going to look at peer review processes and what sort of things the reviewers will be looking for when you're submitting an abstract. Give you some examples of some good abstracts and ones that have won awards at UMA before. And then we've got opportunities then for just some of the trustees that can share their personal experiences from both the aspect of submitting abstracts, but also reviewing abstracts for the conference. And hopefully at the end of this, we're going to have a really good long session to give you the opportunity to bring in up any questions that you've got, any kind of like brief ideas that you might have about what you want to present at a conference. And so you've got this really brilliant panel of people here to discuss with that. So yes, so that's what the plan is for this evening. So why should we present at a conference? So there are loads of professional benefits. It's really good to be able to share what we're doing, to be able to. It's a great thing to have on your CV. You know, a lot of these conferences they'll publish the abstracts as well. So it's almost like your first step to getting published. And it's a really good opportunity to sort of share what you're doing, to be able to go to these big, massive, national or international conferences, meet other people that are doing similar things. So, be able to share what you're doing with on a larger scale. It's really good for career progression. So, if you're applying for another job, they're often asking you, have you got experience of presenting, or have you got any experience of sharing work on a larger scale? So they're the kind of things that you can put down on a job application. Good things to go on your CV. It's really good for networking. From my personal experience, you present your work at a conference and people will come and actually talk to you and say, I found what you're doing really interesting. And then, that could build up like potential collaborations in the future, and learning about what other things, if people are doing something similar to you, then you can learn that and bring that back to your workplace. From a personal experience, it's really good for like confidence building. It's really nerve-wracking, doing any of these sort of things, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's sort of good experience for like teaching, and like with the Society of Tissue Viability, we've got a limited number of bursaries available, and we do actually give priority to anyone that is actually going to present or have a poster, and a lot of other places will do a similar thing. So, or you might get free admission to the conference if you're presenting. It's different for every conference. So I'm not saying that this, just because you're going to put in an abstract to a place that you're going to get a free place. Everywhere's different, but it is a really good opportunity. So why should we actually bother? So conference abstract, it's only going to be a brief part of your paper, but most conferences, they will actually publish it. So like I was saying before, it will become an actual part of the, it'll actually be on paper. It'll be in the, the conference pack. It's really important to be able to write a really good abstract. Learning that sort of skill, because, you're really needing to learn how to summarize things and see, so people can actually, when they're searching for something, they can find what, a really brief and, decide whether they want to read further or learn any more or go and see your presentation. Generally, if when you're doing, you probably know from when you're doing like a literature search or anything like that, when you're doing an assignment, you tend to look at the title first. If it's got a really good catchy title, then you'll go on and read a bit more. You'll then read the abstract. So it's similar for like with the conference. You need to get that really good punchy start to be able to then get people to want to carry on and learn more about what you're doing. And the abstract, it sets the tone for the rest of the paper. So if it's an abstract that we're writing for an actual journal article, and you're going on to be that, it must really represent what you're doing in total. So whether it's a presentation or whether it's an actual journal article. So when it comes to a conference, there are lots of different types of abstracts that you can submit. So the traditional ones that you think about are like the posters. So you're basically going to be writing a little summary of what your poster is going to entail. Then there's also a lot of the conferences now, like UMA. They're moving away from the traditional type of posters, the big A1 posters that are stuck on the wall, and are moving to like e-posters, where it might be a presentation. It could be a so for UMA, for example, it is a 3-minute short presentation. So we'll go through that a little bit more there. There are also free paper presentations, so that you could submit an abstract for a free paper, which is where you're actually going to get up and do a presentation. You're actually going to go up and speak and share your work at a conference, and so that's even better experience. So there's lots of different things that you can be applying for and thinking about when you're doing an abstract. So what actually can you present at a conference? So sometimes people just think, oh, well, I don't do research, so, I don't really need to, there's nothing that I can actually present at a conference. But it's so much more than, just the research work. And I think this is something that I've been finding, going to some conferences that, we're getting less and less of actually the forefront, the actual clinical workload that people are doing and learning about that. It's almost in academia, it's part and parcel that, you do your research, you do your work, you present it, you publish it and you present it. But, we still need to know what's going on in actual clinical practice. And this is where it's a really good opportunity that we can be presenting audits. A small audit of like, reviewing the paperwork on 2 wards is probably not going to be that interesting. But if you're doing a massive audit, or a bit of quality improvement work, that's looking at like, we're implementing a change in practice, and then, we've done a pre-audit and a post-audit, or we've done some sort of quality improvement. We've actually used a proper PDSA cycle or something, that we've collected the data for. And they're brilliant things to be showing at conferences. Practice development, if you're doing something new and innovative, you're the way you're working with your teams, the kind of patient-led work that you're doing, you're changing your practice and you're improving it, and you're thinking, this is something that's really, it's made a massive difference to our patients, and it's made a really good difference to our staff, into their well-being. Then yes, you can present those sort of things as well. Case studies, that's like one of the more traditional things. That was my first ever presentation, poster I did at a conference. I had a patient where we tried a new dressing technique out for a patient with a really complex wound, and that was something that I did in conjunction with the company, and we did a joint poster and we got it published, and that was like my first ever experience. But those are the kind of things that people want to know about. We've done something different for a patient and it worked. So case studies are a brilliant thing to get started on. You can also do product evaluation. So if you're looking at your formulary, you're doing a new innovative bit of technology, anything like that, as long as you've got a robust methodology behind how you've evaluated it, then, yes, you can do that sort of thing. Best practice, we're all, there's loads of best practice statements coming out, for if it's best practice for what we should do with like leg ulcers or anything like that, how you've implemented that into practice, or how you've developed your own best practice within your area of work. And work with industry, like I was saying, if you've been working with industry, you've been bringing in some new products, you've been testing something out, you're doing something different. They're all the types of things that, you can come and you can present at a conference, you can do a poster, you can do a presentation. It's really, really good to be able to actually, more than just, obviously, if you are doing any research, yes, present it. But it's so much more than just research. We need more people to actually be sharing what's going on in the clinical front line. So how to actually choose where to submit. So, we are focusing here, we are the Society of Tissue Viability. So we've got our conference this year, we're doing it in conjunction with UMA, we've got this joint conference. So, there is a little bit of a focus towards this. But there are so many more conferences out there. There are lots of different wound care conferences, leg ulcer conferences, so really have a think, don't just choose, oh, this conference is in Mallorca and I want to go there. Obviously, you've got to try and make sure that your abstract is actually going to fit with the conference remit. Obviously, if it's a bonus, if it's somewhere lovely and sunny, then, why not? But, really have a think. You're not going to submit an abstract about a pressure ulcer prevention strategy to a leg ulcer conference, or vice versa. So really have a think about what the conference is about and whether your abstract is going to fit with that. How likely are you going to be accepted? Have a real think. If it's some conferences are very much more scientific than others. So maybe a piece of practice development might not go to a very scientific type of conference. But these kind of practice development ones, they might be really good for like Wounds UK or Wound Care Today. Those kind of places where it is all of the clinical nurses that are going to. So really sort of have a think about who the audience is. And are you going to attend? There are plenty of times that people will submit a poster and they'll submit it to like 5 different conferences, and, not going to attend any of them. But really, especially now with like UMA, they're doing these e-poster sessions where you're actually going up and presenting. It's really good to be able to submit an abstract to somewhere that you are actually going to attend and you're going to be there so that you can share your poster and, advertise it and actually be there to do any presentation. And yeah, have that thought, because some places they do the traditional poster, which is your big A1 piece of paper, that you stuck on the wall and people will go around and read, so that's good if you're a bit nervous and you don't really want to, you don't really want to be standing up in front of people and presenting. Whereas, like for UMA, they're moving away from the traditional posters and doing more the e-posters. So are you actually prepared to stand up? It's only for 3 minutes and it's not in front of a massive room of people, but are you actually able to present if you need to? So that's a little bit of a basic about what is an abstract and, and where we should, what sort of things you can present. And so from there, I'm going to move quickly on now to Madeleine. So Madeleine's going to do a little session here about, how to actually get your abstracts accepted and a bit about writing techniques. So I'm going to pass you over to Madeleine now. So Madeleine's one of the lecturers, principal lecturer here at Hertfordshire, and she's one of our new trustees. So thank you, Madeleine.
Okay, thank you very much, Claire, for getting us off to a great start. I'm going to drill down a little bit into some of the detail. I'm presuming because we've got enthusiastic people here joining us that I'm almost imagining that you're halfway through your submission, you're ready to finish it off, or maybe you're coming along with just a few ideas and seeing whether this is something that you can push ahead and do for the first time. So I'm going to focus on practical issues, and I'm going to share that from my own perspective as somebody who's gone through all this, as Claire said, writing an abstract is the start of the journey. It's where all of us started, and I really would encourage everybody to do it. If you've ever sat at a conference and you've thought, you know what, we do that, I can do that better, then you need to put your abstracts in, because that's what it's about. It's about sharing best practice. And I really would like to pick up on that point made earlier, that it's not just about research studies. I think that puts a lot of people off. So let's go back, from my perspective of writing, as my perspective as an academic, and also as somebody who sits on scientific committees and selects which abstracts get through to be presented. So I'll try and sort of use that experience and share with you. But I think it's, first of all, really important to sit back and think, what are the characteristics of a good abstract? I think a lot of the time people aren't really sure what this is all about. It is not a case of just dashing a few words, fitting it into a template. You really need to make sure that you're targeting your audience, you're targeting the conference, the theme of the conference, or possibly even a particular session in a conference. But on top of that, think about when you go and look around at abstracts, or if you look at posters, all of those posters or presentations have got through this selection process. Now, in order to get through that selection process, you need all of these criteria here. And I'm going to go through, I'm going to pick up on some of these and sort of focus on those in a bit more detail, because I think actually this is really where people misunderstand what the purpose of an abstract is and why it opens the door. It's almost like the key to the door, if you like, for sharing your best practice ideas. Okay. Next slide. So you do need to sit down and think about it first. There is a process to writing, any sort of writing, and this doesn't mean it's a long, laborious process. You can literally do this in a few minutes, thinking about a particular conference. Claire's already talked about that. What are the needs? What's the type of audience? Who's going to be going along to the Society of Tissue Viability or to UMA? They're very different. An international and a national conference or a more local event has different people coming along. What type of practitioners, what type of information are they interested in? So it really is important to be effective. You do need to think about the needs of your audience. And also to identify essential content. You don't want to waste any words in an abstract, or in fact in a short presentation, on anything you don't need to. So I always sort of remind people, we don't need to know about the 4 stages of wound healing or the history of compression bandaging. People often try and write an abstract like an essay, and it's a completely different type of writing activity. The first thing you need to do is to quite simply get your title right and make sure the title of your abstract reflects the content and the content of what you want to talk about. And I think there's been a bit of a trend in recent years of trendy titles that don't necessarily indicate what the whole thing is about. Well, the very first thing we're doing when we're looking at a title, or if you're at a conference trying to decide whether to view or go along to this session, you're not sure what the title means. You're not going to go ahead and look at that abstract or look at that information. So the title, use keywords, simple words, and literally tell us what it's all about, to be specific and precise. Next slide, please. So part of the planning process is to look at the submission guidelines, and that really is important. And I would say probably 40% of people that submit abstracts get this information wrong right at the beginning. So most of your submission templates will have a specific word length. And if you try and write more, they'll just cut you off. So unless you've actually put your key content in that word limit, you're not going to be able to express yourself very well. So you need to look at the structure, you need to build your arguments, and this is a skill. Writing about whatever key concept in tissue viability in one sentence is a skill, and you need to choose your words very, very carefully. So use the structure, use the format of the template that you're provided, and whichever conference you're applying for, you need to actually specifically rewrite. If you are going to present one abstract to different places, you need to rewrite it with the specific instructions in mind for that conference. I'll come back to multiple applications a bit later. Next slide. So one of the things that we all need to do when we're collecting this information together or deciding what to write is we need to be structured in that approach. And I use an approach I call clipping. So the first thing I do, I think about what it is I'm writing about. It might be best practice, it might be a particular study. And I look at the information and different sources of information that might be useful to me. So I will look at links, I might collect images, I might look at particular bits of data or ways of presenting that information. And I will just cut and paste that into a Word document where I just collect my ideas together. I'm not refining anything at this point. I call that distilling, where you're now thinking, okay, this is the type of material and information that I need to actually present. But you've got to now get this down usually into about 250 words. So you've got to edit, you've got to literally just pick up the headlines and explain what you're doing, what the results were, and what your conclusions were. So you need to keep focused. And my tip, and we'll debate this a bit later on, is I think that a lot of the time people waste a lot of words with references in an abstract. I think there's very little need. You're not presenting a literature review in an abstract. You might need to refer to some guidelines or some key information, but really think about the need to have reference material in your abstract. That can come later in your presentation. Next slide. So first draft is about getting on with it. And I sort of always encourage people, I think you should write, first of all, on your own computer, on a Word document. Don't write straight into the template that's been provided. Read it, make sure you know what the instructions are so that you can start to structure your work. But I think it's much easier to free write. I call this turning off your internal editor. Don't go chasing around after references or data. Just start to structure your work and get your initial ideas down. And even at this early stage, it can be really helpful to have some feedback from a critical friend, somebody who often knows about the practice or the study that you've been involved in. Next slide. The majority of what you write is about editing, and even in 250 words, it could take you several hours to come up with your final 250 words, because the first step of editing is summarizing, verifying your content, making sure, have I followed the exact instructions that you have given me? Have I got the right information in the right box? And have I not gone over the particular word limit? The second step of editing is to trim down and smooth out and make sure that information flows and is easy to read. So this is a proofreading, and all of us need to proofread our work. Personally, I tend to bang out some information. I leave it for a day or two. I let it cool down. I go back to it. I look at it. I often then think, don't know why I wrote that in the first place, and I will edit that down. 90% of writing is rewriting and editing it. And I think what you're aiming for in an edit is to cut your first draft down by about 15%. We call this sort of cutting out the bloat. So a lot of the time you're trying to explain too much at first, and then you need to go back and think, well, I actually haven't given them any results. I've told them what I'm doing and why, and now I've used my 250 words up. Well, that's not going to cut it. You need to present your results within that 250 words and a bit of conclusion as well. So the difficulty, I think, about writing an abstract is, have you actually effectively summarized the whole thing in this very short amount of words? Next slide. So to recap, we'll get a title, crisp, clear, concise title with your key words. Make the context, if you can get some of the context, if you're talking about primary care, secondary care, you're working in Portugal or in London, wherever you are, if you build that into the title, then that stops you having to explain a little bit later on. You need to give a one or two lines maximum of background information. So you haven't got, time to write an essay. You don't need to prove what you know when you're writing an abstract. That's not the function of an abstract. Next slide, please. The main body, I think there's two parts to the main body, particularly you often find conference templates will actually use that traditional research template, background, method, results, and conclusion. Now, if you're writing about best practice, sometimes that can be tricky to try and translate that into your best practice. But essentially, background is, context, a bit of information. You need to explain what you did before you tell us what the key results were. And often in an abstract, I tend to find you find a lot of explanation about what I'm going to do and no results, or it's all results and no what I did. No explanation of what you did. So the types of things that, again, in one sentence, you could cover all these points, Claire, if you click on a little bit. You need to tell us what type of patients, what type of wounds, what type of clinical setting, what your sample size is, if this is a study. Give us this background information. And this doesn't mean lots and lots of detail. This could be in literally 2 or 3 sentences. How long were you working on this? What particular assessment tools? Might be a line about standard practice if you're talking about compression therapy, etc. And you need to tell us what your outcome measures are. So it's just literally 3 or 4 sentences trying to cover as much of that information as you possibly can. Now, once you've done that, that gives the reader, and that might be the person who's deciding whether you're going to get through to this conference, or it might be the person at the conference deciding whether to read or go to your session. This gives them the contextual information and gives us the confidence that actually this has considered all these criteria, and now I'm really interested in to find out what the results were, what they found. So next slide. Now, the key findings are the most important sentence of an abstract, but I really do want to stress, don't tell us what you found unless you've explained how you did it. So again, these are some of the general information, results of your analysis, primary, secondary outcomes. Give us facts. So give us headline facts. I think it's frustrating when you read an abstract and it says, I'm going to tell you what the results were. Well, no, the abstract needs to say, we found X, Y, Z, or it is clear from the data that, give us something to actually get our interest. So it's important, again, you might have negative findings, things that you didn't find out, or need to summarize your views as well. So it's important to get a balance, a couple of sentences about how you did it, a couple of sentences about what you found out. Next slide. And then conclusion in an abstract is often 1 sentence, might be 2 at the absolute most, depending on the word limit. But it's about your primary take-home message. And it's about being concise and really sort of making sense of what you're trying to convey. It's the so what part of the message that you're trying to convey. So you should have some practical recommendations. Again, that might be incorporated into that sentence. So you give your big take-home message. And as a result of this, you might then say, I'll be discussing practical recommendations on how to improve this clinical practice or this study. And then you would leave that for your presentation in the poster. Next slide. Now, there's a lot of information there to squeeze into a very short space and a short word limit. So it sounds obvious, but people do struggle with this. Try and use short sentences, simple words, not lots of jargon. Abbreviations are a good idea. If you're going to abbreviate, make sure you write out the word in full first. Don't assume, especially at international conferences like UMA, don't assume that your acronym or your abbreviation is fully understood by somebody else. It might mean something completely different in a different practice setting. So try to write short sentences, and I always use the phrase, write to express yourself, not to impress. You're not trying to use large, long, complicated sentences here. Depersonalize your writing. That will make it clearer. So don't write about we and our, and people talk about our nurses and our patients and our doctors or my hospital, my clinic. Try and depersonalize that, and it will be much more professional and you'll use less words. And again, try not to use emotive language like disappointed or we're excited about this. Those are extra words that don't really add any meaning into the context of an abstract. So my mantra is say it once, say it precisely, move on, and don't say it again. Next slide. And I think it's important, and it's great to see there's lots of people joined us tonight from all different practice areas, different countries. When you're writing, remember that you've got an international audience. I think that's particularly true, if you're in the UK, you're working in the NHS and the conference is going to be in London. It's very easy to think that everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about and understands the complexities, say, of community care in the UK. Well, people will have different experience of that. So remember that to explain the local context. So that might be explaining patient beliefs are different in different countries. It might be about care delivery, might be about scope of practice, might be about particular implementation of guidelines. All of this is really relevant to explain within your abstract. So use accessible language. Think about people reading your abstract in English as a second language, and that's another reason to keep your words short and to the point. Okay, next slide. And I think also, and we might take some questions about some of these aspects here. Think about the publication ethics and copyright. We all know that if we've been involved in a project with a group, it's not just me writing that. We should acknowledge everybody in the group. And I think that's really, really important. But also it might be about acknowledging supporting organisations, which might be your employer, might be a charity, could be a variety of different providers. You'll often on templates, submission templates, be asked to talk about conflict of interest, and people will often say there isn't any without necessarily thinking that through. You need to think about permission. Have you had permission from work, from patients to share this data? And that goes for images and photographs as well. We tend to think of that with clinical images, but they should be properly referenced. You're not going to put any images in an abstract, but this is important for when you've had your abstract accepted. Plagiarism. we're seeing a lot of issues with plagiarism. It's very easy to copy an abstract or paper content from somewhere else and think nobody else will realise. You can plagiarise yourself. And this is one of the reasons you've got to think very carefully. You should not be presenting an abstract to more than one conference at a time. You don't know whether you're going to get accepted for humour. You need to go one at a time, see where you get to. If you then don't get that abstract accepted, then it would be acceptable to send that off to somewhere else. But again, you may have to change the structure of your abstract slightly to fit the new guidelines from a new conference. And remember that once it's been accepted, that your content gets passed to the publisher and the organisers of the conference, and they will often, as Claire said, be very keen to actually get you to write this up. So think about the whole process from beginning to end. Next slide. And I think this is my last slide. It's just a summary slide, sort of coming from the outside, looking at those points at the outside of the slide. Before you get on with writing, spend a little bit of time planning and thinking. Just that time will mean that your writing process is quicker and much more effective. Make sure you understand the instructions. We've got somebody from humour here tonight, so plenty of time for questions here. And make sure, it sounds obvious, but it is amazing how many times people don't proofread, they don't spell check, or their work is disorganized, it's upside down, back to front. And that can make it very difficult when we see perhaps the germs of a good quality, project or a study, and it may be let down because you've not expressed yourself very well in the abstract. Next slide.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Madeleine. Some really interesting points. And one of the things I was just going to add on to what Madeleine was saying when she was talking about doing your drafts, and you start off with, write it all down and then you edit it down. Keep those first drafts. So, because if you think once you've done your abstract, you've written it, and then you've got your abstract, and your abstract's been submitted, you've then got to write your presentation or write your poster. You've already got all that information down on paper. So, that's your first draft almost then of your poster or your presentation. So, yeah, it's a really good practice to sort of write it all down, almost kind of put it all down in one piece of paper, have that thought on a Word document.
Yeah.
And then
never throw anything away. That's
original.
never throw anything away, because you will probably then put it back into a presentation, as you say, or your poster. Yeah.
Thank you. So just going to do a specific bit. So obviously we're trying to keep it very general today, that, this is just learning about, how to write an abstract in general. But because we have got humour coming up, the submission date for humour is on the 6th of December. So we're just going to do a little bit now just about specifically for submitting an abstract for humour. So very similar to what Madeleine was saying, the specifics for humour is that it is 250 words, but that excludes the title, the authors and the affiliations. So, when you're writing all the names and the titles down. So you've got 250 words for the main body. The template is very simple. This is all the template is. It's got your aim, your method, your results and your discussions and your conclusions. So it's just got those 4 areas to submit it on. It's an online submission form. So you just go onto the humour website, and then you can just do it on your Word document and then copy and paste it onto the template for the humour documents. So humour, it's the European Wound Management Association, so it is a big conference, and it is got all different types of things. So if you're not sure, will my work fit in, this is the list. It's a big list of all of the different submission categories that you can submit to humour. So if you look at all of these different things, we've got acute wounds, we've got home care, we've got burns, we've got negative pressure, leg ulcers, pressure ulcers, prevention, education. There is so much in there. So have a real think. You know, what is that specifically that your work is that you've been doing? Is it a dressings evaluation? There is a section there for dressings. Are you doing something to improve the quality of life for your patients? There you go, you can submit it. So you need to think what it is you're doing. Sometimes it might be that you need to kind of tweak what you're doing to sort of fit into one of these categories, because obviously this is where they get submitted to, because when at UMA they will have then all of the posters together for all of, you know, all of the acute wounds posters will be presented together. So you want your poster to be in the best category that, you know, will get the best readers, because, you know, if you're a nurse, you're not necessarily going to be you might not be interested in looking at what translational science is. That might be something that's a bit more scientific. But, you know, you want to see your post, you know, you're interested in negative pressure. You want to go and see what the posters are about negative pressure. So make sure your work's going into the right category. An e-poster. So what is actually an e-poster? So a lot of people don't really know what this is. So this is different for UMA, like I was saying before. It's not necessarily just a big A1 piece of paper that, you know, is posted on the wall. It's actually electronic. So you can either have it as a single page, like a traditional poster, or it can be done as a small PowerPoint presentation where they say you can have up to about 5 pages, and you can do it as a small presentation. When you do these e-posters, you get a 3-minute slot to briefly go through it. So this is one of the poster winners from UMA last year here. And so what it is, you will be given a designated time slot where you will go and speak to a small group, and it is just a small group. It's probably no more than 20 people will attend each poster session. So don't start being getting nervous and think I can't do this. It's, you know, it's only a small area, and, you know, it's a really good experience. But, you know, there are also going to be screens, so people can scroll through the screens, look at all the different posters. So you can see your poster on a screen, but then you will be given a 3-minute time slot where you will actually go and present your poster in person. And there will be judges, there are awards, you know, for the best posters, you know, and brilliant prizes. So it's always really, really worth having that thought and doing those. And so this is an example. So this was one of the posters that won last year. So this is a really nice example. This is more the traditional style poster. So it's got a very succinct title. It's got the aims, it's got the methods, it's got the results, and it's got the discussion. And it's very clear, it's focused, it's easy to read. It's got everything there in one poster. And so then, you know, the person then might just present that and then just go through each stage and just giving those results and giving them an overview of their poster in that 3-minute slot. But one of the other examples there is for someone else that won one of the posters. They did it as a mini presentation. So they broke it down almost into those different stages, made it really easy to see. And then they had, then you know, they could then go through those individual slides. They had more than just the 2 slides, but I could only fit the 2 on one page. But they're just little examples of the type of ways that you can do an e-poster. So whether you are deciding you want to do an e-poster, a regular poster, if it's a different conference, or an actual talk, so one of the free paper sessions, the abstract's going to be written in exactly the same way. But obviously then it's then thinking, once you've got the abstract submitted, how are we going to present it afterwards? How are we going to do it? And they're just ideas of the type of things that you can do. So thank you very much. We've just done this bit where we've just had a bit of a talk about the posters and everything. And we'll have a bit of a conversation now. We'll answer some of the questions, have a bit of a chat with some of the other members. But one of the... Yeah. Oh. Sorry, I didn't...
Claire, I think you need to turn the audio off.
I know. I just realised that. So anyway, I'll turn it off anyway. I'll stop sharing. But what that last slide, it had Tina, one of our previous members there, sharing all of the benefits there. But what we were just sort of wanting to say there is whether you're a member of the Tissue Viability Society or not, you know, this webinar's been brilliant for you. But if you want to join the Tissue Viability, a lot of the trustees tonight have said that they'll be happy to, myself, Madeleine, and any of the others would be happy to come and, like, you know, speak to you after, help you with, you know, your abstract submission. So, you know, but obviously because there are 72 people here tonight, we can't do it for everyone. So we're having to sort of say, you know, we're just prioritising members. So if you're a member of the society, we will help you with your abstract submissions. But yes, that's another benefit for being a trustee. Being a member, sorry. So, any questions? What's been going on in the Q&As?
So there's about 4 questions in the Q&A. I can't get it to open up again, sorry. So unless Kerry or Dawn or someone, and some very insightful questions in there when I looked before.
I've got them up. So one of the first questions was, most of the work of writing requires multiple authors, not a single author. Can you accept the idea of an author as owner of the writing and, for example, a reviewer as co-author?
So yeah, there's no limit on the number of people that you can have, you know, on a poster. I mean, obviously, if you're submitting a small poster abstract and you've got 20 people written on it, 20 names, people are going to be like, really, are we all involved in that? You know, how is 20 people being involved? But yeah, if you've got the main author, they go first. Anyone else that has collaborated, that has helped, put them on the poster or on the abstract as well. You know, obviously don't just put someone's name on it that hasn't done any work on it, because that is actually not plagiarism. It's there is actual term for it, but you know, it's not allowed, basically.
Yeah, I think, like you say, as long as they've made a significant contribution to the work that's being presented, then you can have multiple authors on a paper.
Yeah.
Can I submit an abstract that I presented at another conference before?
Yeah, I'll pick that one up. I can see a comment from Eva there. Hi, Eva. It's perfectly acceptable to develop something further. You've often actually done further work. That's what you're suggesting here. So you presented something, it might be preliminary or the earlier stages of some work. Now you've developed that up, or you've seen it perhaps being implemented over a number of years, and you've now got some new observations. So I think the important thing is, it's when you're writing up and presenting your new abstract and thinking about what you're going to share at this new conference, is making sure that it is fresh. So you might give a bit of context. I first, conducted an audit or a study or whatever in whatever year. Since then, this has happened. So you make it very clear what your starting point is and how it's different now. And I think that's really important, because a lot of the time we often see sort of, things being initiated, but we don't actually get a real true sense of how they mature and develop. So, I think, Yuma would be very, very keen for you to do that. Yeah.
There's been a couple of questions around this. So, can I submit an abstract now if my project results are not all collected, but will be before the conference? And somebody else asked, will preliminary findings be accepted or further data to follow?
Claire, do you want to pick up on that? Or?
I mean, I would say yes, submit it. It's like I said, the abstract is just that. It's just that introduction to your work. It's just that you've got to get the reviewers hooked, that they want to learn more about your work and get you have you present at their conference. So I would say yes, and just make sure it's explicit in the results that they're not ready yet, but they will be by the time they will be there for the conference. Or if you've got preliminary results but there will be further analysis, then yes, put that all in. But I certainly would give it a go. Yeah.
I think certain conferences, again, are more accepting of it than others as well. And sometimes it's a bit of trial and error, really, around what some conferences will accept and others won't. But yeah.
Hang on, Karen's.
Yes, and I can see Karen's made that point, which is a point I made. Don't say what you're going to find. So in this example, I think you need to show what your direction of travel is. You know, I think often with a study, you haven't got the results yet. You've not collated them, or you've not fully analysed, but you've usually got an idea of how things are shaping up. So you can give some, you've got to give some meat, some detail, rather than this blanket, I will tell you what we found out. You know, that's not helpful at all. So I think it's about how you do it, and that as Claire said, that you're clear. I think what we've seen in the past sometimes is that we've seen interim results presented when in fact there is nothing new to present. There is actually no data. There's, you know, it's almost just we're ticking the box. It's sometimes associated with industry where they're just trying to get the name of a product up into the abstract. So I think that's part of the ethics of it. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment.
I was just going to say, Karen's just posted in the chat. So Karen from UMA has just posted that UMA aren't accepting sentences like results will be available or study not yet finished. So again, that's just something just to check. It's always, if you're not sure, ask. It's easy enough to do, you know. They're the kind of things that there will be ways that you can contact the conference organisers and find out before, because like Sarah was saying, some might accept.
And there's always next year, isn't there, Karen? You know, there's always next year. So maybe you're too early in the cycle. So now you know when the conference, when the abstract deadline's going to be. It usually is in December time. It's always just before Christmas. So then you can get ahead, get your stuff back in, maybe go along to this year's conference to suss it out, see what's going on, and then you can write it up early for next year. So the following December, you're all there, ready, packaged, and ready to go. But
you could frame it in a different way rather than like an unfinished study. You know, you can do it as the planning. You know, the preamble. This is what we're trying to achieve. You know, there's plenty of trials that will present. You know, this is what we're introducing a trial, and we're going to be opening it next year or something. You know, there is always that possibility that, you know, it's like a introduction sort of thing to your work. So there are other ways around.
Yeah, that was one of the other questions actually in the chat, is could I submit an abstract for a research method? So again, you know, if you're planning your work or you're writing a proposal, it's very reasonable to submit that sort of, you know, pre-trial plan then as such, as an abstract as well.
Sarah asked also, is it a problem if your abstract has links to industry, like you're talking about a particular product, or you're very obviously being sponsored by a particular company? I mean, like you said, Claire, your first poster was actually sponsored by industry. Do you think that's a problem these days?
No, you just got to make it clear. Yeah. That's all. Yeah, make it clear. And it's going to sound a bit facetious. Make sure you spell the company name and the product name correctly.
Oh, yeah. And Sam has made a comment. It's worth bearing in mind that sometimes you might submit an abstract for a poster or presentation, but it might come back as being accepted in a different format. For example, an abstract for a poster, which gets accepted as a presentation. Any advice on that?
Just be prepared, because it might be that, you know, if it's, for example, you've submitted an abstract for a post and they've come back and said we think it would be a free paper, that means that they think it's really interesting and you need more than 3 minutes to go through it. They really want to learn more. So if you get that, that's brilliant. I mean, it might be the same as well, that, you know, you've submitted it for a free paper, but they've only got a limited number of free paper sessions. They've got more poster sessions than there are free paper. So it might just be that it hasn't cut, made the chop this time for the free paper session, but they're still interested in your work and they still want to present it, so you're offered the poster. So that is a possibility that might happen, and just be prepared, but go with it.
There's There's one other question, which when I was thinking about this session, I actually wrote sort of like a little list of top tips, and this was actually one of my top tips. So Altner has asked the question, and for the references, do you follow the Harvard referencing style, or is there flexibility in the style of referencing? So that was one of my tips. Most of the abstract guidelines won't specify a type of referencing style. So when you've only got 250 words to go with, then it can be really useful to use the Vancouver style rather than the Harvard. So the Vancouver style, where you put the number in the text and then write the reference down later, rather than the Harvard style, where you'd have to put, say, Flanagan et al. 2016. So you're able to reduce that word count right down just by changing the style of referencing that you use, and that can be really handy when you're trying to fit everything into 250 words. So yeah, check the guidelines, but generally you can use.
And sometimes that can be a criteria. You know, I've been on panels before where they'll use that as a criteria to reject you. So if it tells you to use Harvard or Vancouver and you use the other one, then you may well get rejected. It is about following instructions. And keep your references in the abstract to a minimum. It's not an essay. That's not where you're telling us your literature review. Yeah. So bear that in mind. Yeah. Okay. No rules from Uma. That's great. So you're flexible. So go with Sarah's advice then. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So just a question, Claire, do you think there's a different skill set between, you know, the one-page poster presentation and the e-poster?
I do think there is a little bit of a difference, because, you know, with the e-poster, you with the traditional poster, you think you've got like this A1 size, and you very much, you're making it look artistic, and you want people to come in and read it. Whereas actually the e-poster, it is more like a mini presentation. So, you know, it is slightly different skills really. But you know, there's often lots of different courses and webinars and things around about how to do a poster and how to get a poster, you know, acceptable, and, you know, make it look pretty, and make it easy to read. So it's slightly different. I mean, it depends on as well how you're doing your e-poster. If you're doing it as you know, like I said, there's the two ways you can do it. You can do it as that traditional one-page poster, and then you just go through it bit by bit, or you can do it as a small slide presentation. So it's really, you can fit it around how it works for you, really, and your, you know, use it to your benefits. What your strengths are. So I think we're coming to an end now. So have we got time for one last little question, or any last hints and tips from anyone?
You know, just scrolling down.
We've answered most of
we've got one question here from Yapping Liam. So they've said, I've submitted an abstract for UMA this year. When will I receive the outcome? So I believe that is going to be in about February time. Does Karen remember the exact date? I know it's February. But yes, well, anyway, that's mid-February. Yeah. So thank you. Can you submit more than one abstract? Absolutely. Some people, you know, we go to some conferences and you see like some people have got like 10. You know, if they've got 10 different bits of work, you know, they will submit everything.
But remember, if they all get accepted, you will spend your time running around, you know, so don't overload yourself, because I think people do that when they think they're not going to get accepted.
There is an interesting comment from Sam, and I've had personal experience with this, of people who've been called out by predatory conference organisers where there's no conference. And yeah, have you had that happen? I had it. I was like, what on earth is going on here? Any advice on unsolicited I can't say my words, unsolicited requests to submit abstracts for conference X?
I never ever do that, I have to say, because I've been caught out and I've done the work and they're just fishing for information, often for a journal, and sometimes there is no conference. So yes, I personally don't don't do that anymore.
Mm. Yeah, I
think generally do your research. You know, I get these like phishing emails and there's junk emails that come through, and it's like submit an abstract to our wonderful conference in Venice. And some of them, it might be a genuine conference, but they're interested in is the £450 admission charge that they'll charge you to get in. So really, I think about where you want to submit to first, and you look to where you want to submit rather than someone approaching you, because generally if they approach you, it's
unless you're famous, they're generally not going to approach you.
Right, well, I think that has come to the end of our session today. So last question, there was asked, how many minutes will presentations at the conference last? So 3 minutes is the posters, and if it's a free paper session, I believe it's for 10 minutes with 5 minutes for 8 plus 2. Yeah, Karen said 8 minutes with 2 minutes for questions. So it's not that much longer doing a free paper session than it is doing a poster session. So,
that's good. Yeah.
Be brave.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, be brave.
Right.
And
well,
we'll be there to help.
I hope you all have found it really interesting tonight, and I really hope that this has encouraged people to submit and get more people at posters and presenting at conferences. And like we've said before, if you want any support, if you're a member of the society and you want any more support or someone to read through before you submit, then just please contact the society, and I'm sure we'll be able to give you a little bit of a hand. And thank you very much.